creature,
I love
sweet
that.
creature.
Uh,
Hi,
hello.
All right.
beautiful.
Zach, Brandon, hey, congratulations on your new series, In the Know for Peacock.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
So tell us how this series actually came about. What birthed this series?
Yeah, so Mike Judge had an idea that he wanted to do an animated interview show, and he thought it'd be fun to set it in the world of public radio. And that's how he thought of Zach, because he knew he wanted the interviews to not be scripted, and he knows Zach's a great improviser, and Zach also loves NPR. And then Zach brought me on to help develop it. I think because NPR sort of gives us the opportunity to make fun of Zach and myself and people like us. We are NPR listeners, but they also sort of just are our brand of people. And so it was a fun opportunity to make fun of ourselves.
So these interviews they're real interviews or they're somewhat scripted, like you kind of give them like an idea of what's
Yeah,
actually.
they're not any more scripted than a real NPR interview would be, where we write the questions and we want to seem well prepared for the interviews, but we don't tell the guests anything about where it's going. And it always went places we wouldn't have expected it to go.
So Zach, how do you I'm assuming you're handling the interviews. So how do you handle something like that?
It's really exciting. I mean, I'm by nature a very curious person. Like whenever people would ask me, oh, if you couldn't direct or write or act, what would you do? I always say I would be Terry Gross if I could. I would love to be like able to do long form interviews because it just seems like such a treat to be able to dive into the minds and hearts of people who you admire or at least are curious about. For these, it was amazing because we had these writers who would write these incredible questions. So I had these really funny questions, and then Brandon would be on an iPad sending me like, "Oh, ask this or try that." So I felt like I wasn't just totally floating in space by myself, but then I could just improvise with the guest as well. It was fun. It's fun. It's like it's kind of like a weird fever dream. I feel like it's like some weird acid flashback where like you can talk to these people you're really interested in, but you'll be a puppet. It's like I feel like it's like I did some like dangerous hallucinogen, and this show is just a fantasy in my chemically damaged mind.
How did it come to the decision that this would be a stop motion animation, but the interview subjects would be real?
Well, like Brandon said, we are so close to the characters depicted in the show. We are basically are them. And there's something that seemed appropriate to us about having, the stop motion puppets are kind of these delicate, slightly twee things that are being manipulated by forces beyond their awareness. And we felt like, well, that's like us. We are these delicate twee things manipulated by forces beyond our awareness. So that felt appropriate. And the other thing is with the interviews, we really wanted to, as I'm sure you've experienced, actors, writers, they can get talking points and then they just hunker down on those talking points and they say the same thing 900 times. And we wanted to get into a place where the format was bizarre enough that it would release previously undiscovered parts of the guests. And so if it's a stop motion NPR host asking them real questions for an hour, we're pushing them deep enough into the uncanny valley that new, less sort of media trained aspects of them will hopefully rise to the surface. And they did.
One thing that I think was fun in a lot of the interviews is the Lauren character would reveal these vulnerabilities, and the guests would often end up counseling the interviewer, where they'd be like, well, where do you think that insecurity comes from? Or how do we help you with this problem? And I think that's something they never get the opportunity to do in interviews, where they're suddenly like, oh, I'm actually just helping a wounded person right now, rather than trying to say the right thing and not mess up.
And I love the series because it is very similar to like The Office, but I'm assuming everyone's in a solo in their booth, or there is actually interaction amongst each other.
There's interaction. We when we recorded the lion's share of the stuff we recorded was everyone was together in a booth in real time reacting to each other. I think one thing that was important to us for the show was that we include what's messy and contradictory about the characters, that people are not just one thing. There are a million things all at the same time, and we're messy. And so in everything from the design of the set, the design of the costumes, The sound design, we have noise in the background that is all added in because we wanted it to feel like this is a world that is messy. It's not clean, it's not simple, it's not glossy. And part of what we did to accomplish that on the performance side is have everyone together so that you got a feel of a real sort of warm, messy human environment, which was important to us.
That is true, and that's why everyone's gonna love it. It's about as messy as a cat Zoom bombing right now.
Well, I'm delighted. What is your cat's name?
Nino.
Nino!
Nino.
We love you, Nino.
So, Zach, Brandon, thank you very much for speaking to us about In the Know. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dick. Have a good weekend.